Yeah. They were like telling me like that people against the. Thanks everybody for being here. This is the Open Space and Clean Water Advisory Committee meeting. I think Tina, I'm not sure we've met in person. Would you like to do that? I'm Stacy. Nice to meet you. Would you like to do the roll call?
I would love to. Brian?
Here.
Jonathan?
Here.
Dallas?
Here.
Myers?
Here.
And Billy?
Here.
Rader?
All right.
Oh, shoot. Oh, and wow.
Shoot, I must have misheard. I said here already, so I don't know if I said here for someone else. I'm sorry. But Milwaukee's here.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Tina.
Catherine's here as well. I'm not sure if I heard my name.
Thanks, Catherine. We got you. I'm not sure I heard your name either, so thank you for making sure. Okay, thank you all. We'll move on to new business. Did everybody have a chance to read the minutes for the August 3rd, 2022 meeting?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, I was not at that meeting. So are there any corrections or amendments anybody has?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as stated.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
I think that's everybody except me. I'll abstain, of course. Okay, that sounds great. All right, we'll move on to the improvement project application for the Broadway Federal Way pathway. Turn that over to you, Lisa.
Sure, thank you so much. We'll get Tina to pull these presentations up. So just kind of a little disclaimer to the way that we did these, and I'm sure you can see in your packets that we did these as two separate, there's Jessica, hi. Oh no, you're good, you're just getting started. We did these as two separate applications because they are in two separate locations, two different asks of money, but in general are very similar projects. So basically creating some different connections within our city to help get our community members to our open spaces, our parks, and different amenities that we have through the city. So we'll start with the Broadway and Federal Way pathway application. Oh, that's okay. Let's take a minute. You're good. Tina's going to share the screen super quick. Everybody can see it.
Oh, I think there was a chat message about abstaining from the vote on the minutes, I think.
Go back to the Zoom. Up in that top, see the chat at the very top, along the top of the bar. Oh, Catherine and Steve as well. Perfect. Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome. Sorry, I just want to make sure that was in the record. I knew Stacy said it, but I wasn't fast enough with my unmute, so.
Perfect. Thank you so much. You're good. Okay, so the first project that we're going to look at is the Broadway to Federal Way pathway. And then secondly, we'll pop down and look at the Cassia Park Garden Street connection. And what we hopefully have set you up to be able to see, we have Jessica Seslag, I think I say that right?
It's fine with 1200 letters together, but you can see that.
Selag,
Lot of consonants.
Yeah, the Polish thing.
And then Bree Brush from the Mayor's Office Transportation Advisor. And I'm sorry, Jessica is our Deputy Planning Director. So they brought these applications to us. They've partnered with other different agencies, Compass, for example, to come and submit these proposals. And so hopefully what we've done is we're able to show you kind of exactly where the pathway and the connection goes, but then also show you those larger connections that it makes throughout the community. So the first one that we're going to talk about is the Broadway Federal Way pathway. So this is just to, do you want to, sorry, Tina, will you go to the next map just for a minute so people can orient to the, or just go to the, no, just the next slide. Perfect. Just so everybody has a larger view of kind of where we're at. So you can see the orange line is kind of that larger bikeway on Federal Way across on the bench. And then what we're talking about right here is the loop that kind of, as you come up Broadway, you move onto Federal Way. So you can go back slide. I just wanted everybody to see kind of where we were at. So this is towards the end of Broadway. That's the stoplight there at Linden. The reason that this is so important is to be able to have people have a safe way to not only go up to Federal Way, where ACHD is planning on putting a crosswalk there so that people can connect from the bikeway on the north side of the street and be able to cross and come down and connect to that Leadville bikeway that will then get them all the way into town. And then vice versa, up to the top to Federal Way, where they'd have kind of an easier way to access across east-west or across the town. PBS has been working with Compass for a few years on this project. It's been a large project for everybody to talk through. Karen Gallagher with PDS has been working on this project and she unfortunately is out of town. And so what they're coming to ask for today is the larger cost of this project. I believe this is 1.4 million. And we are required, the city needs to provide a 7.34 match for design and construction of this pathway. Jessica, do you want to talk at all kind of on connections and just this project in general? We were going to kind of tag team this presentation.
You're gonna come up and.
Sure.
So, if any of you have biked over in this area or driven really, like, so Broadway isn't necessarily the street that you would take if you're biking. You'd be over on Levy, and it's a great kind of low stress residential street. The connection here, so the project itself would be to connect from Linden, you come around up to Federal Way or Federal Way and down. But as a biker, what's really kind of cool about this project too is that it will facilitate connecting at these more local roads. And from Linden, and the Linden connection up here is because if you're on this side of Broadway, you need to cross to get onto the east side of the street. So it facilitates that crossing here, and then also from Leadville, you might want to connect on Linden, but you probably more likely to go down a local street and then connect on the pathway here to move around to Federal Way. So there's some discrete connections, and then there's the pathway itself on Broadway. I believe right now is currently 10 feet of pathway, controversial either way. And so the project itself is $1.4 million, and the local match is 7.34%. We built in some contingency because this, basically the next step would be to go out for RFI to identify a firm to move through design and construction. And with construction just being out a little bit, we built in that 25% contingency. That's just what we've heard from some contractors, that prices are fluctuating that much. So if we didn't need to come forward with that match to that 25% contingency, it would just come back to the budget.
Is there some type of preliminary thing of how you're gonna, I know when you go underneath Broadway right there, there is it's probably about 10-foot wide sort of bike lane. So is it gonna incorporate it, that's already there, otherwise it's all concrete?
Yeah,
I think that's in getting to just even from concept to 10%, 30%, and then to final design. We'll look at all
So that's
those.
gonna be huge.
Yeah, I'm sure we'd pick up that existing facility there, and then just make sure it's continuous the whole way. That you're not kind of dropped off. You know,
No,
it's getting to the, or up.
and I do believe it's what I read in the application was a dedicated pathway with even a curb blocking. So it's a protected lane.
Do you want to click over to the next one too, or do you want to take these
Sure.
kind of one at a time?
It kind of follows the exit that comes off Federal Way that loops around on the Broadway.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, and there would be a cross because the Federal Way bike path is on this side, and so there's a crossing here that will be for pedestrians and cyclists to get over. And then when they get to this side, then they'll loop around on that side of the street.
I think that one of the things we found too, and you'll hear in the coming months, another project that we're working on, but I think one of the challenges that we have are kind of the bench divides, if you will. So coming from, the Federal Way bench, or even if we're talking about over where we're at right now, dropping down to Amherst or Boise State, those bench connections are really tricky. So this is a great kind of basic path that can get you to a lot of other places. It also then connect you on that bike thoroughfare, if you will, that goes all the way across Federal Way. So
I'm really excited about this. I live in that neighborhood and I ride that bike path all the time. And you're sort of stranded on a bike, kind of stranded. The Federal Way bike path is great, but you're a little bit stuck up there unless you go really, really far. And even if you go really far, it's not a friendly bike lane. It's more like a shoulder. You go like down to Amity. So which I don't think, some people are fine riding on those, but I think lots of people aren't. So anyway, I was just delighted to see this. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commission members, back to the map again. And Jessica, when you talk about that crossing there, what is, and that would be an ACHD crossing?
Yeah.
Do you know what they're proposing, just a crosswalk, or they put a light there?
I'm sure it comes to light,
I think it's a
of some kind, I don't know, like, yeah, like a, pedestrian,
Okay, cool.
not really even complex anymore, but.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was it, a pedestrian?
Pedestrian hybrid beacon, so it's activated when a pedestrian.
So,
Yep, cool.
I have a question for you. On the streets that are there, can you go back to the map? Where the says proposed pathway, there's 2 streets that come in there, they go past Kroger Park. That's Richmond, I think it's called. Are those gonna end up connecting to the bike path then, punch through, I would assume?
These 2 parks right here.
No, so these 2 streets
Oh, I see.
here, this Kroger Park is right here. That's
Oh, okay,
Kroger
it's
Park.
covered up.
So is that gonna punch through then?
This already connects.
That doesn't, this connects.
This connects. So this one already has a connection. This one we don't have plans to punch through. I think they have to look at the properties there. I mean, if there's just a way through the pathway.
This is just, so open area for the road. Right here. Some
Okay, there's nothing
of it's,
there.
some of it's yards and some of it's right away.
Yeah, I think we really look at that, if there's a way to acquire some access there, whether dedicated or just.
This road is actually somewhat busy, people coming in and off, because you got chips out. Know that, I'm sure.
Yeah, how would you?
Yeah, there is a bike lane on Linden, but so you as a bicyclist, like me personally, if I was coming down Lebanon, and you may know this, you just, if you use this a lot, you're probably not gonna wanna get onto Linden and then use the crosswalk to get up to the path. So this is really more for those folks that are coming from over here and wanna connect this way. But so if you come in across Linden and get to this street, we'd wanna start looking at like what's some kind of treatment to just convey to, like, directionally, if you wanna get to Federal Way, like this is where you're gonna wanna turn. I'd be interested to see like what is the
Well, that's still,
possibility to access
that's still
through
better
here?
than.
Yeah,
That's nuts.
yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, and so we're, as a planning department, going through a zoning code rewrite, our code's been updated since 1968, so it's been updated in 1968. It's been updated in different sections, but we're doing a whole overhaul. And I think what I wanted to at least point out then with that rewrite is we're being really intentional about where we anticipate growth should happen, where we've already invested public dollars and that growth could happen. And so we look at our best in class transit routes, so Vista, Fairview, and State Street, and then our best kind of in class bicycle and pedestrian facilities, which would be the Greenbelt and Federal Way. So like what kind of development could happen around the Greenbelt, and it is different than what could happen around Federal Way, but that is like one of the best protected corridors for bikes and peds that we have, other than the Greenbelt, but it is this like island. If you're on Federal Way and on that path, like it's great, but we really want to look to how can we connect that, and so this is one of those key connections that then if you get to Leadville, then Greenbelt, it really starts to stitch together that primary network for how like you're protected from vehicular traffic like as much as possible, if not the whole way.
So here's just breaking down the dollars. As Jessica mentioned, there is that pretty large contingency that's built in there just in case. We all know things have fluctuated so much. So I think making sure that we can cover that 7.34 as things move forward. So the levy funds requested are the 128,000, and I think you come to the next. We have more. I think maybe let's make the motion on this one, kind of like I said when we started. I think, so thank you, Jessica. It's important to keep them separate, just even though they're similar in nature of what they accomplish. I think making sure that we kind of approve them separately makes sense. just for logistics wise. Yeah.
In that case, I have to voice my opinion. Well, I think the project is good and necessary. I think it's a bit of a stretch if you look at the criteria for our open space and water. Just in that, providing a pathway to an open space area. I mean, the way I read it was we were trying to connect people up to the Federal Way, shopping area and stuff like that. I didn't see it like going into an area that was open space. That's all I wanted.
I think that's a good observation. You can connect to the Greenbelt from that route to go down Leadville. You can also connect to Cassia Park. So those are like two key places that you'd be able to access. Like I would be able to access from my house, and everybody in my neighborhood would be able to access much more easily if we had that kind of connection. So I think it is, squarely inside of our category 4.
From Leadville.
Yeah, yes.
From the top of Federal Way, making that connection.
Yep.
Well, okay.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, Commission members, you bring up a great point. I think that before we moved into looking at projects other than acquisition, other than just clean water, we had a thorough legal review by our legal team on ballot language, on the criteria, that would make sure that as we start moving more towards looking at pathway connections and using levy funding for pathway connections, that is actually an appropriate use of the funding, whether the committee would rather see funds used in another direction or not would be beside the point. It's more of the fact that the research has been done, the legal opinion has been done, and that it does qualify for that. So, and even though it doesn't have to make a direct connection to an open space, but it would build upon, different connections can build upon the ultimate goal of making connections into other open spaces. So it is a broad, I think the language was created for this most recent levy. It was created to be more broadly positioned so that there would be more flexibility to buy property in the flat land, for example, that would be normally a park, but actually is open space.
Yeah,
open space. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure we put that out there. I know we've had that discussion before. I think the mayor even came to one of our commission meetings years ago, or whenever it was, just discussing that this is kind of the next iteration of probably what the direction we're going to go. But duly noted your concern, and it does need to be noted.
Oh, and I should correct what I said. It's not Cassia Park. It's Terry Park, sorry.
Terry on Federal
Sorry,
Way.
yeah,
Terry Park.
Terry Day Park, sorry about that.
Yeah, and then just considering open space is any kind of park, neighborhood park. A big neighborhood park is like open space. The Greenbelt is open space. Any place that's not really developed. Is
Madam
that?
Chair, Commission members, yeah, I mean, in a sense, there's a couple of definitions of open space, but for the purposes of looking at the pathways plan and the connectivity that it can provide, we consider everything as an opportunity to create a transportation corridor to either an open space. It could even be to a school. It could even be to, creating additional opportunities for a neighborhood to no longer have to get in a car and drive somewhere, but to create a connection out of a neighborhood that would get them out into a more safer connection. And Bree can speak to that much more eloquently than I can, except for the fact that the funding mechanism by legal definition works if we want to use levy funding for that.
And Commissioners and Madam Chair, I think too, when I look at this fourth criteria or category 4, one of the things I noticed too is improved safety for non-motorized recreational mobility, which this is definitely huge. And I think too, Doug, like you're saying, access to open spaces and then other parks resources and park amenities. So it kind of broadly defines what we're trying to connect people to. So maybe not necessarily the open spaces that we've been thinking about for the last few years, whether it's, you know, Hillside Hollow or the foothills in general, but open spaces that are a little bit more urban and parks resources.
Yeah, and I really think a lot of that is great for especially the bench, because there's been a lot of work done against the foothills and everything, so just want to make sure it's like,
Definitely.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, those people all been paying in the levy too.
Yeah, good point.
In that neighborhood around Kroger Park, the Richmond, I think that's what it's called, is it historically called the Richmond? It's from the 1890s, because I've sold homes in there, and there was like whole farmsteads in there. I mean, it's one of the oldest parts of Boise. It used to be its own little separate like village.
Yeah, because when you're up on the bike path and then you like look
Yeah.
down and behind, you can kind of, you can see that it's,
There's still big, small acreages and
yes,
stuff in there.
yes, exactly, yep. And I think you brought up a good topic about like, what is open space? When I'm on the Greenbelt or when I'm on the Federal Way bike path, I feel like I'm in open space. Like if I didn't have a bike path like that I could rollerblade on or walk or ride my bike on, I would feel constrained and sort of stuck in my neighborhood. It's a place for me to go and be outside and be safe, and it's and exercise or just get some fresh air. And so even if it's not the foothills or a park with grass, to me, that feels like open space because I can move some distance and be safe. Anyway, it's valuable. I think it's valuable in that way for sure.
Can I get a little clarity on the dollars again? Is that 128,000, is that fixed?
No.
Or it has a potential of going up 25%, or does it contain part of that contingency?
And Madam Chair and Commission members, that is an up to amount. So I think we've been doing that the last few times, which makes it a safer ask so that we don't have to come back. So that 25% contingency is included in the 128.
So it's gonna be 153.
No, the 25% is included in the,
128.99.
Oh, it is included?
yeah, it's
Gotcha.
included.
Okay, I'm
in-
sorry, I missed it.
So the one, excuse me, Madam Chair, Commission members, the 7.34% is 102,686.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So that is
Thank you.
So there we go.
Yeah.
I was thinking the chance to add another 25.
Yes. And that's just for pure safety in numbers.
All right, any other questions, discussion?
Anybody online?
All right, is there, we have a hand up?
Yeah, I missed the last meeting, so I apologize if a review of the remaining levy funds was provided at that last meeting, but would that be possible to just provide that before we move into the vote? And and thank you all for the discussion. I think that Michelle and Stacey, you guys brought up really good points, and Commissioner Doug, I think those were all great points. So I appreciate everybody and the discussion.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, we are just at about $7 million that's left in the levy funds right now. So that was a great question. Thank you for asking that.
All right, would anybody like to make a motion? I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendation for up to $128,000 in levy funds for the Broadway to Federal Way Pathway Connection Project.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, I think that motion carries.
Yes, so Kasha, and I'm sure that Director Holloway can talk about this better than I can, but just because I
I
think
don't want
this
to.
one has been around for quite a while. And I think it's been talked in many different iterations and one that I think people have seen the need for, but it's kind of getting all the pieces to fall together to make it work. So this is the Kasha Park to Garden Street connection. Again, you're gonna hate 18, but could you pull out just I think it's good to kind of have a larger view and then be able to dive in. Can you go to the next slide for me? So just so you can kind of get a good example of where things are. So we're talking about just up again on the bench. We just talked about kind of being able to get the bench downtown, or at least down to the greenbelt and other off the bench, not be so isolated. So this is coming just off Cassia Park and then would connect to the Garden Street bike pathway. And it also has good east-west there that would connect as well. That's the Cassia Street bikeway.
I'm still not sure where it is.
Yeah, are you having a hard time finding it? So we can, yeah. Yep, so if you even, and Commission Member Crier, if you want to even look up Cassia Park, you should
I
be able.
haven't pulled up on
Oh,
my
okay.
computer. I was trying to find Garden, where it connects to the Garden Street.
Gotcha. Do you want to go closer in there real quick?
Oh,
It's a ways down there.
It's okay.
so it's actually the canal bank. Oh, okay.
I
The
like
one that they
it,
get
yes.
mad at you if you go down that, the way they yell at you.
Yes.
It is.
Isn't there a fence back there?
No. Well,
Yes, there is.
Yeah, there is a
yeah,
fence.
well, yeah, you can't get through, yeah.
Yeah,
So this is, yeah, basically using that unopened right of way from Cassia Park down to Garden Street. It's the electric light switch, the light switch canal.
Yes.
I should know this.
There's a story
Electric
about
light
it.
switch.
Yes,
Is that what it's called?
yes.
Uh-huh.
And so basically this is a very similar kind of connectivity piece, if you will, trying to, again, I think these maps are always better for me because I think you can see the small connection that it makes to be able to go from the park to a street, but to be able to see the large picture where we're really able to get, let's say somebody that lives up on the bench off Cassia, they can have a safe route all the way down to whether it's Ann Morrison Park, the green belt, and to me, I probably haven't said this in here before, but I ride my bike with my kids a ton. And I think it's interesting to note as a bicyclist, I think that all streets should be labeled black diamond, intermediate blue square and green triangle. So this at least gives people green triangles to be able to get somewhere to those open space and parks resources. This one is funded very similarly, and maybe I'll go through that. And then Jessica, if you would like to talk a little bit more in depth with this, if you'd go one forward for me, thanks. So just so you have an idea of funding as we go through questions and talk through this is a little bit more expensive. And again, that 25% contingency is built into the 171 that the ask is for. Now I'll have you pop back to the map.
Is the cost in building the bridge over the canal, is that the main expense? The canal's
So
pretty good size here.
I'm not sure on the exact expenses or how the bids and estimates were put together. And that's something that PDS has been working with Compass. Oh, sorry, Bree can probably answer that. Thank you. I didn't see your hand. I missed it.
Fine, Madam Chair, committee members, this project is to tile or pipe the canal, the lateral, so that a pathway can be placed adjacent to it, and they can still drive their maintenance vehicles on top of it if they have to access the head gates or anything like that.
The other canal,
The electric light switch here, this section.
but not the other canal. They have to make a bridge over the canal that's there like in Cassia Park, right?
The bridge just to the north, the Riding Bob Bridge, doesn't have any planned improve right here on Albion, doesn't have any planned improvements yet. But this project starts at the pink line and goes right to that bridge.
So wait, but you have to cross the water. to get to the national. Yeah.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes, you're right,
Because there's
you're right. On this
a
side,
bridge here
Yeah.
over the canal, and then there's the waterfall
right,
where it has the footbridge, but that goes,
yes.
ties into here.
Right here, there would be another bridge.
Okay, that's how. that was
Right
my
now,
question.
there's a ramp for their truck on either side, so they can ramp
Yeah.
one side and up
Oh,
the
that's it.
other.
That was,
Yeah,
because
so
I knew
actually-
there was something there.
Yep, so this would go right into the park, with the bridge.
And so the electric light, okay, that's gonna be piped and
Tile, yeah.
What is-
tile.
what does tiled mean?
under,
Yeah, they'll,
Yeah.
yeah, and Madam Chair, this has been a project we've been working on for years. And the canal company finally agreed to the access if that would occur
Yeah.
for safety purposes. They weren't interested in fencing, haven't been in the past. They wanted it tiled in order to move it forward. There still is some concern with some of the neighbors that we're gonna have to deal with that are extremely vocal about not wanting to see the pathway through there. And so we'll have to deal with that once if you were to approve this and all funding comes to fruition to move forward. There'll be some engagement with those neighbors, but there has been quite a bit of discussion with them, and they're very, very opposed. We love it because it provides, if you can look over towards Garden Street, there's no access to, legal access to the park. So people have to go all the way around Albion or the other direction to get into the park. So the purposes of the pathway plan concept was how do you create better access into park spaces? And, we're working on a plan at Ann Morrison as well on creating access from the rim above down into the park. Right now, anyone above there.
You have to
or
go
up on
all the way
bench park,
around.
You go on Americana or down Capitol to get into a park that you can see is right there.
Uh-huh.
And so, this is exactly the same type of scenario.
Yeah, and I walked this facility a few months ago with some members of our PDS team and the NMID staff to learn about what's going on here. And they did mention, and when we came to the board to present our PDS staff did, this improves their operations quite a bit because of the access they need to get over here, the way they're driving those trucks down the ramps, the neighbors putting trees over here, putting their patio equipment next to their easement. And this facility here has actually built into NMID's easement, so that's something that has to be resolved as well.
And they're quite vocal.
Yes, they all are. A neighbor actually came out and spoke to us while we were out there, and she had all kinds of questions, this gentleman here.
Yeah, I get you.
So, sorry, just so that I understand exactly what is being proposed, they're gonna tile this electric light switch, which means put it underground,
Mhm.
the canal.
Uh,
And then they're gonna, and then also build a bridge? Or is it just the tiling?
Well, the bridge is here,
Okay, the bridge will be there.
right
Okay.
there into the park, and then this will be covered, and there will be a fence, and there'll be a pathway on the other side of the
Okay, so that's what this funding does all that. Okay.
So after the bridge, let me just be clear on this.
Here.
So when you say tiled, so the rest of the canal will be underground then, all the way up to Albion?
Yeah.
Oh, I can see why those people are upset.
Well, yeah, they're upset, Madam Chair, Commission members, they're upset at two things. They're upset at the tiling, but they're using the tiling. They're upset because the pathway is gonna be behind
Behind me.
it'll be now an open pathway behind their homes that they don't wanna see. That's number one.
Yeah.
And they're using the fact of why would you tile waterways where you're actually daylighting, your philosophy is to daylight
Yeah.
waterways. Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
That's number two. And that does have some
That's a
reasoning
good question.
behind it. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah,
But we're not gonna get the path if
unless
we
you
don't
do
tile.
that.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I get the
We don't have
hard.
a choice if we want the path and the connection through there. And if you would ask me, I think it's more important to have the connection
Yeah.
than to have the open water.
Have they litigated with you yet?
No, so that would be the next move, I bet you, with some of these neighbors. I don't know if they have a litigating stance. Because it really isn't much of a stance to say, I don't want to patent, why not?
That's.
And the neighborhood as a whole submitted this project.
Yes. You're talking
Yes,
6
thank
people
you.
or 5 people, I can't even remember how many we've been dealing with there that have been very,
Because
very
they're,
upset.
they border it. It
Yes.
makes sense, they would. I was there yesterday walking
nice.
that, and it's beautiful.
Uh-huh, it's really.
It's open space. in my
Yes, I agree.
It's
I
shady.
agree.
It's shady, it's peaceful, the water, you hear it. Wow, so I had no idea, but I understand that, the piping, because, the penitentiary canal, when they pipe that from Diversion Dam all the way down, I ride my bike up there quite a bit, and when that was gone, it's kind of sad.
It's a bummer.
I mean,
Yeah.
I saw 2 ducks in there yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a safety measure. I
Yeah,
mean, it's-
yeah,
it's,
I get it.
and we're trying to develop this relationship with all the irrigation companies in working with them, because we need them in order to make this pathways plan come to fruition.
Yeah,
And I don't think they're all gonna require it. I think
No.
Spalding Ranch we're having to do.
They've already tiled. we've
Yeah.
already
So
buried.
it's gonna happen in some places,
Yeah.
to
But in
be.
some places, they'll be left open when there's enough space to have room for
Yeah.
a fence.
Goddard's a good example.
Sun in the bank,
Yeah,
Goddard,
yeah, the
wide,
other one.
wide open, they have plenty of room.
And committee members, a good example is Spalding. So we did have to bury that line in order to have the, sorry, that startled me, to have the irrigation district have their easement to be able to work over that area. But we did leave the old canal open that we will then use with our pond. And so there's different, they all work differently in different places, and I think have their own kind of needs and what they need. But I will say too, back to Bree's point, you know, and there's a letter in your packet, I think the neighborhood as a whole is the one that's been pushing this and brought this to parks years and years ago. But so just as a note, yeah, like Doug said, it's a few neighbors, which I can't disagree with at all, so.
No things we can do to accommodate them as much as possible, a nicer fence, taller fence if they want. There are things that when we get to that point in design that we can work with them and try to make accommodations like that.
I wonder how many people just walk that right now, like, it's not gonna be a tenfold increase in traffic back there, what would you think, or?
We can't get through.
There's
Oh, yes, that's right,
there's
it's
a
just,
little
yeah.
gate that's not too off-putting people who will walk through it if they're not afraid to break the rules and disregard some signs. So it could legitimize some of that.
What kind of path is it gonna be? Is it gonna be paved or is it gonna be, like dirt?
I think we have it scoped as paved, but the whole intent for the pathways plan has always been for them to be context sensitive. So if through design, we see that it makes more sense for it to be dirt, we can do that. But because this is paved here and we have asphalt up here, it seems
Kind of makes
unlikely.
sense, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Also with
Cool.
ADA work.
yes, because there is a ramp over there too.
Okay.
Wow.
It's great. It's a bummer to run into that, fence. I'm sorry, it's a bummer to run into that fence right there.
Can we talk about the other end of this proposed? path?
Sure.
The north side, where there's, are there footbridges also proposed on the north side of this?
At the end of the pink dots,
Maybe I'm confused. If you look at the bigger picture,
oh, sorry.
so I guess that yellow's already there?
Yes,
Is that,
Mhm.
is that
Yes.
footbridge up there?
yes,
It's already built?
yes,
Okay. So that's the old.
yes.
It's a great pathway. There's a bunch of
That's a great.
walking. Is there a bridge over a canal? Next to Catherine Albert's
It's
Park?
like the secret part of it.
Right there.
To the left. I thought where it says like, Boise, like downtown Boise, River Greenbelt.
Oh.
So Commissioner Member Raver, you're asking if there's another river crossing there between Catherine Albertson Park and Footbridge?
Yeah. But I get, the scope of this is in that blue square at the bottom?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I thought we were.
Nope, just that one, it's almost a block, that kind of just encompasses that. This was just to kind of, show the connection all the way down to the other parks and spaces. Yes. Oh.
All right, any questions from anybody online, Catherine or Tia?
You know, I unfortunately haven't been able to walk that area before. I don't live in that area of town, so I don't have anything right now. Thanks.
Okay.
Where did the estimate come from? The estimate is that?
The estimate, I believe, came from Compass, came up with.
We have engineer's estimates on this one, actually.
Okay.
And then we did actually, part of this too is moving the utilities for NMID so that they can continue to turn their maintenance truck. But in the grand scheme, I think that compared to the piping, timing of it, and the bridge is the bulk of the cost.
Commissioners, Trevor Kestner, Parks Planner, I wanted to share that with ACHD did the bikeway that went through the park, we did a cost share for them to examine what kind of pre-design the bridge that would go over and make this connection. So we're kind of a little bit invested in it already.
Catherine, do you have anything to add? Any questions?
No, thank you for the opportunity. No, I'm good. I know the area and yeah, I don't have any questions.
Okay, that sounds great. Would anybody, oh, any other questions? Do you have a question, Scott? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion? I will move to approve the staff recommendation for up to $171,000 in open space and clean water levy funds for the Cassia Park to Garden Street Pathway Connection Project.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh. Killing me. Can I abstain?
Sure.
I can't,
Yes.
it's just,
You can, whenever you think.
there anymore.
I'm gonna abstain too. I'm not familiar.
I think, Tia, just to your point, I don't think we have to know an area personally in order to, weigh in on a project. There have certainly been projects that we've discussed and voted for that I have not been to, me and other people on the committee have not been to personally. So I don't think that that's a requirement. If that's a concern of yours.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'll just weigh in, you're correct. And we don't have our legal team here to provide any,
Ron's on.
is he on?
Yeah.
Oh, he is. So if Rob, if you wanted to provide any, or here in the discussion, if you want to provide any input on that. But you're absolutely correct, Madam Chair, it's impossible for everybody to get out to all locations. I think what you're really approving is the concept of what is being brought forward to you. Does a connection like this make sense in your park? Does this make sense that you're connecting an entire neighborhood that doesn't have access to the park at this location and also access to another bikeway to move through the community? Does it not make sense or does it make sense? I think that's really what is before you.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I've only lived on the bench in my time in Boise. I've lived in 3 places on the bench. One of them is my current house, which is not too far, just off Vista Village. And then I lived near the Morse Hill Cemetery for a few years. And I remember when I lived over in that neighborhood, riding along Garden and then picking up that little path and then coming to a fence and a canal that I couldn't get around. And I was like, what is going on here? Why doesn't this connect to the park that I can see? And so I had to go all the way around. And it was just very strange. I thought this is easily fixed. This is easily solved. So I think that it's really useful. When I lived in that neighborhood, I took the Garden Street bike path to the Greenbelt all the time, multiple times a week. I was just telling Matt that it was like this secret part of the Greenbelt. I always felt that it was like a little secret corner of it. So I think that it's really valuable. And as I was sort of looking at the big map, that's in the winter when the trails are bad, like one thing that I do is get on my commuter bike with the fenders and my lights in the dark of winter and just ride through the neighborhood streets that are safe to ride. And this would be one of those places. This would create loops that me and lots of other people could use to get to where we want to go, or just for some exercise to get out of the house. When other places aren't available, or you just don't have enough time to get to the foothills. So, you know, having lived in that area, I think it's extremely valuable. I think it's a great project. And I think with $7 million in the bank that we've had since 2016, we're not short on money, we're short on projects. So I think this is a really good project.
Yeah, Stacy, I appreciate that. My hesitation was simply because of that tiling and having things go under. I mean, it does seem like, I understand we need to work with the canal companies, I do. And with that explanation, I do feel comfortable knowing that there's potential for the affected to raise concerns. I'll change my vote to supporting it. And I do hate to rudely, I had mentioned in the email, I actually do have to hop off to lead a session at 5, but I wanted to give that vote. I will change it to in support. And thank you for the discussion.
Thanks, Tia. I feel your pain. I feel your pain on tiling that canal. I really do. I love that.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion today.
Thank you.
And it's just a proposal to tile up to Albion.
Yes, correct.
There's a short section, and the trade-off is that will really make it, that park accessible for, 100 houses.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
have to go around otherwise and on more traffic streets to get there. So that's the trade-off for me.
I'm sorry, do you mind putting it on the big map again? That's a good point, to see how long the waterway goes.
I believe those.
Oh, yeah, so you don't really see how far, but it goes, it must go a ways.
I don't know specifically how many feet that it goes. I would say it's just over a block would be
I think it goes from
a couple blocks.
Madam Mayor, committee members, this Roundabout Canal is one of the longer canals we have in the valley. This is a small section of it.
Right.
And there's another section that is left uncovered with a pathway in southeast Boise, section of the Roundabout, the Apple Street pathway. So when it is appropriate, it doesn't have to be tiled. And the irrigation district has worked with us on those sections to make sure there's fences, there's signage, there's trash cans, whatever. But in this situation, it just can't be avoided.
Okay, I'm gonna change my code too. I support it fully. Stacy.
No, thanks, Michelle. I feel you on the tiling. I don't love it. Don't love that part.
But there's still some open water and it makes sense for, to make it safer.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're good with kind of how it went. We don't need a full call, just kind of wonky, or we're good.
It might not be a bad idea.
Let's, I
Yeah,
think
let's
maybe
do
just,
both.
since
Let's
it
just
was
make
kind
sure
of weird.
about where we are. Okay.
Thanks.
All, or you can do a roll call?
Should do roll call.
Okay.
Yeah, in favor or against.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Stay.
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Iris,
Yes.
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Great, thank you. And then you have Tia, said she was yes. Okay. Great. Okay, thanks, everyone. I'll kind of keep it with you, Lisa, for committee updates.
Yes, Madam Chair, Commission members, the only update that I have are, council's very excited to hear about the accessible trails application that was approved. So we are actually, oh, thank you. I didn't know, I forgot it was in there. We're gonna move that to a work session just to present that to them. That will be on September 20th, just in case anyone's interested in seeing or watching. But they were excited about that. We got we're working on a contract with the trail builder, and things are pretty exciting. And we actually, I think, even have another connection that David found that I think will even increase what we can do, and will that his trail crew's gonna work on that, but we'll even make the project. So, that was all I had for updates. I don't have anything for executive session this time. But we have a few things.
That sounds good. So are we ready to adjourn if you don't have anything for executive session? Okay. I don't think, do we have to do a roll? We don't have to do a roll call.
No, just call.
Just call it. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Now everybody wants to make motions. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Bye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank you all.
everybody. Yeah.
Bye, thank you. Director Holloway, sorry I called you Commissioner Doug.
She's sorry she called you Grandma.
That's okay. No worries.
Sorry, I couldn't get my brain and mouth to connect, so sorry. Bye, everybody.